Hey podcast fans, we're going to be recording episode 200 of Talking Cars in front of a live audience in Brooklyn, New York on Friday, April 19th, and we want you to be there. Just send us an email to talkingcars@consumer.org and let us know if you can join us for this special event. Tickets are free and on a first come, first served basis, so don't delay, secure your tickets today. We hope to see you there. We give our first impressions of the all-new 2019 Mazda 3 we just bought for our test program. We discuss the recently revealed Ford Escape and Toyota Yaris Hatchback, and we answer viewer questions, including one about what top-tier fuel really is. Next on Talking Cars. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode. I'm Mike Monticello.
I'm Jake Fisher.
I'm Gabe Schenhauer.
So I'm kind of excited about today's episode because we've got Jake and Gabe here, and for those of you that don't know, Jake and Gabe are the two guys who decide which cars we test and how we test them here at the Consumer Reports Auto Test Center. So I think we're going to get a lot of great insights from these guys today. And I guess what I'm really saying is they've been doing this a long time because they're really old. I'm just kidding. I'm actually older than Jake, which really bothers me. But we're going to start today's show off with some news. Two cars have recently been revealed ahead of their launch at the New York Auto Show, the Ford Escape and the Toyota Yaris Hatchback. And so we're going to start with the 2020 Ford Escape. Just a quick background on the Escape. I mean, it competes in the compact SUV segment, which is the biggest SUV segment in the country. And, you know, the Escape, we kind of like the way it drives. It has a nice handling, but it had fallen kind of behind the times. Its MPG was a little behind some folks, and and also didn't have the standard advanced safety features that we feel it should have and that many of its competitors have.
So, I mean, look, the Escape, I mean, this is, you know, small SUVs, this is the family car right now. And actually, you look at Ford, who's kind of walking away from cars with dropping the Focus, dropping the Ford Fusion. I mean, they're really putting all their eggs in the basket of SUVs and trucks. So this is a super important vehicle. This is going to be their mainstream vehicle for the masses. And so it is a major change and a major departure from what we've seen before. I mean, this thing is, you know, truly crossover. I mean, it looks like a car. The powertrains are very interesting.
I mean, it looks completely different than before, but it also, like you said, has different powertrains.
1.5 liter,
three-cylinder
cylinders.
Turbo. And I was going to actually ask you about that, Gabe, because you know, we've driven three-cylinder turbos from Fords before, but they were 1 liters.
Right.
Were you surprised to find out that they're putting a 3-cylinder in this Escape as the base engine?
Not so much, because it's a world car, even though it's based on the new Focus that the U.S. market won't get, actually. But they've had that 1.5 liter 3-cylinder turbo in other world markets, and with one Ford, they are really trying to make one product for the whole world without so many variations. Yeah, that's an unusual setup, and that's going to be the main engine, because most versions will get that engine. So it'll be interesting to see the performance and fuel economy from that engine, because in the past, with 1 liter 3-cylinder in the Focus, for instance, it didn't get any better fuel economy than a normal 2 liter 4-cylinder non-turbo engine, but it was just slow in acceleration.
There was almost no reason to get it. And you know, both the 1.5 liter 3-cylinder turbo and the 2 liter 4-cylinder turbo are going to be mated to a new 8-speed automatic transmission. But maybe is the bigger news maybe the 2 hybrids? I mean, there's going to be a regular hybrid, and there's also going to be a plug-in hybrid, Jake. Yeah,
well, sure. I mean, look, I mean, actually, if you could look back in history, the Escape was the first SUV that was a hybrid in our market. So it's good to see that coming back. But I think what's interesting, you know, Gabe's talking about one Ford, world market and whatever. I mean, in some ways, this is kind of what's hurting Ford. You know, you look at some other manufacturers, look at Volkswagen, you look at Toyota, they're specifically saying, okay, here's the car for the American market, here's the other car for other markets. Ford has really done this whole strategy of saying, okay, well, this is the car that's going to work all over the world, and it's going to be interesting to see how that works out.
Now, why would that be a bad thing?
Well, because there's different things that are important to different parts of the world. So if you look at, for instance, their cars, which weren't very successful here, which they're going away from, these were vehicles that, well, they handled really well, you know, and all these kind of things that are really important to say the European market. But when you look at the American market, where, again, Toyota and, other manufacturers like Volkswagen is really making these specific, like there's more room, and there's things that we value, that highway cruising and all that kind of stuff, rather than something that's small for the cities or something like that.
Right.
So, and look, Ford has been most successcul at what? Big trucks, F-150s, which they sell basically all of them in North America.
Well, it is. It is slightly longer. It's slightly, wider. It's a little bit bigger than before. They're also saying it's 200 pounds lighter, which is, if that's true.
Well, if you look at the profile of it, it'll be interesting to see what, in terms of interior room.
Right.
I mean, it's not nearly as boxy as it traditionally has been.
Right. Yeah.
Let's go back to the hybrid and plug-in hybrid.
Yeah.
So the Ford has a very, very good hybrid technology. It works really well. We tried it in the Ford C-Max that was been discontinued, but it reflects the same strategy that Ford has with the Fusion, a hybrid and a plug-in hybrid. So that'll be really interesting.
Yeah, and that plug-in hybrid is estimated that it can go 30 miles on pure electric driving. So we'll see about that. And also, but really important thing, standard safety systems now, forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking, the things that we really think all vehicles should have. So that's a really good thing. So let's move on to the 2020 Toyota Yaris hatchback. This is going to get a little confusing because the way the Yaris has been, originally the Yaris was built by Toyota, and it was both sedan and hatchback. And then a few years ago, the Scion brand had the Scion Yaris IA, which was actually a rebadged Mazda3 sedan. And then the Scion brand went away, and so then they renamed it the Toyota Yaris IA, but they still had the Yaris hatchback. And then it was confusing because we had, the Toyota Yaris IA that was a top pick, and then we had the regular Yaris hatchback that wasn't really a very good car. It still had a 4-speed automatic. And now, finally, we have a Yaris hatchback coming out that is, again, a rebadged Mazda 2. So now they'll be the same basic platform, hatchback and sedan.
You forgot to inform everyone there'll be a test.
There will be a test.
End of
I'm
the
not sure if
episode.
I passed or not even, and I have notes. I have notes.
Of course. So yeah, if you're still with us after all this confusion.
Sorry.
So the Yaris sedan and hatchback get united now. So they are basically the same car now, just two different body style versions. The Mazda 2, which was the Scion IA, or Toyota Yaris IA, it was a top pick for us, and it's one of the best subcompacts actually. It's enjoyable to drive. It has standard automatic emergency braking. It's not, unlike most subcompacts, it's not a car that beats you up with the harsh ride and overly loud cabin. And I think it's a big contribution to making the Yaris a viable competitor.
Right. Can I ask something, Jake, though? No, I can't. Jake says I can't. But I'm going to anyway. Because I'm hosting. So what does this say about Toyota that they have to go to Mazda to have them build a good hatchback and sedan for them in the subcompact class?
Well, Toyota is doing this now for several different categories, right? In some ways, what's interesting about the Yaris, or what is now the Yaris, it's a fun little subcompact. And it seems that Toyota is doing a lot of outsourcing of fun, whether or not it's the Supra, which is kind of outsourced to BMW, or the 86, which is outsourced to Subaru for the most part. So it seems like they're doing a lot of that, and it's too bad because they used to make a lot of fun cars. So.
Yeah, it's an admission by Toyota that we were, with all due respect to mighty Toyota and all the technology and all the resources we have, fun hasn't been really a major success.
Well, there's also a dark secret, which is fun doesn't make money.
Right.
So they're not making a whole lot of money on. They're not going to make a whole lot of money on Supras, in my opinion, on 86s or the subcompact. They're going to be making money on the stuff that they're designing, which is what? Highlanders and RAV4s and Camrys and all these things. So,
Well, the big benefit here is to consumers, because now you can get a Toyota hatchback that is reasonably fun to drive and is
honestly,
one of the better cars in the segment.
It's not a bad thing, and Toyota's doing more than just putting their badge on it, but they're also putting in standard safety, which maybe other manufacturers aren't necessarily doing.
Right. On sale September 2019, for those of you that are wondering. So let's move on to this week at the track. We're going to talk about our 2019 Mazda 3 that we just bought with the Select package. Has an as-tested price of $24,115. We're going to give you kind of, our initial evaluation of the car. It's going to be going into test pretty soon. So brief overview on the Mazda 3. For those of you that don't know, it's for a long time now. It's been one of the, sportier driving, pretty sharp handling, in the compact class. If you want the sporty driving car, we would typically say go for the Mazda 3. The interior's been getting a little bit nicer over the years, but it still was kind of loud inside, had kind of a stiff ride. Now we've got an all-new Mazda 3. So Jake, we'll start with you. Give me your first impressions of the all-new Mazda 3.
Well, I mean, we haven't fully tested it, but I mean, I drove it last night, and look, I was a big fan of the last generation Mazda 3. I mean, I almost like kind of the mental kind of thought as you're driving the thing. It's almost like kind of like a sedan version of a Miata. I mean, just like really fun, a little bit noisy. This is a different car.
Right.
This is a very different car for better and for worse. Quite honestly, it doesn't feel like a Mazda to me anymore. It feels more substantial. It feels more grown up. It's very quiet. It's nice inside, but it's like, I feel like they're trying so hard to maybe be something they aren't. I mean, it almost feels so the infotainment system is kind of like right out of like last generation BMW.
Yeah.
Not even the current one. The key looks like it came from a Volvo. I mean, it drives like a mid-sized car, even though it's smaller. It doesn't drive like something like small and nimble anymore. I'm sure it's very capable. But it's a whole different experience.
Right. So, Gabe, I mean, you've driven it obviously as well. Would you say this is, again, just initial impressions, a better Mazda 3 for more people, but maybe not as good of a Mazda 3 for those previous core Mazda 3 buyers? Because, I mean, we suggested to a lot of people, if you want a fun-to-drive compact, go for a Mazda 3.
Something along these lines. The handling is, particularly the turn-in response, isn't as quick. But the car rides more comfortably. It is quieter. It's slightly roomier. The interior fit and finish really is at least half a notch above the rest of the competitors with soft touch materials. All the knobs and buttons have a really solid, nice, damped, soft feel to them. So, and Mazda wants you to think like you're buying a bargain Audi.
Right.
So, it is less sporty, less edgy, but more refined, more grown-up-y, and it's expensive too. It's one of the more expensive compact sedans. I mean, our car is $24,000, and even the base car doesn't starts almost at $22,000.
Right. Well, that's
and you can go up to $28,000 with that.
Well, I was going to ask. I mean, is that a smart thing for Mazda to do, to try to take a compact car that usually you go because you don't want to spend a lot of money on these cars, and now you're going to have to, and it's trying to be something that most cars in the class aren't.
It's trying to be something that most cars are not, but it's, when you think about it, again, it feels more substantial. It feels like you're driving a mid-sized car, right? It feels like you're driving something, but it's also priced like a mid-sized car.
Right.
It's got a powertrain out of a mid-sized car. A mid-sized car gives you more room. So why not just buy a mid-sized car? At this point, I mean, if you're looking at this, why not buy an Accord? Accord probably has comparable steering, comparable quietness and all that. And it's too bad in this market that there's almost, not that option anymore. I think that's what I kind of miss.
I mean, I'd say that there's probably the right customer for someone who is a city dweller, who appreciates a compact footprint, ease of parking and maneuverability, that, who doesn't want a basic bare bone kind of car that's noisy and has hard, cheap plastics inside, and appreciates something that's a little more upmarket.
Right.
So I think that the Mazda is the right car for those kind of people. And I don't know how many of those people are out there.
Yeah, my biggest letdown was the steering. It just doesn't turn in very quickly at all. It's kind of a little bit mushy when you turn in. It's fine once you start going through the turn, but we're used to Mazdas having a pretty nice, pretty quick turn in, and this car does not have that. So I was kind of a little let down about that. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Gabe, we're going to get some other Mazda 3s from Mazda. We're going to rent them, including the hatchback with the 6-speed manual and an all-wheel drive version as well.
Yes, hatchback, we'll try that, the manual as well, and all-wheel drive is quite significant
for the segment,
in
right?
this segment.
Yeah.
It's only it and the Subaru Impreza, as far as I know.
Right, so we're going to evaluate those cars as well. We won't test them, but we're going to evaluate them and include those thoughts in our full road test that will be on consumerreports.org as soon as we can get it up there.
Right.
So,
and before that, there's going to be a first drive review, so stay tuned for that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, very exciting.
Hear about what you think about the fact that we're taking no touchscreen. This is still got to be something.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you on the steering, but I mean, now most of these cars have Apple CarPlay. And the fact that almost everyone, including BMW, now has a touchscreen where you could actually access this, going through CarPlay with a knob here and trying to select the thing.
I mean, admittedly, I have a brain the size of a pea, so take this with a grain of salt. But I was honestly confused quite often, when I had it for the weekend. It just didn't seem easy to navigate. And when we see cars from Kia and Hyundai and others that make these things, even BMW has now become really easy to navigate. There's a way to make it easy to navigate,
right.
And it's a shame that Mazda has been trying to figure infotainment systems out for a while, because we didn't particularly like the last one either.
It wasn't too bad. I mean, it took some learning curve, and this one does too.
More of a learning curve, I think.
I mean, it's better in some ways, it's worse in other ways. But we haven't said the last word on it yet.
True. We're going to get you comfortable.
It's almost like Jake said, it's almost like a 10-year-old BMW iDrive system, and since then the BMW has evolved its system,
right.
So it's much more versatile.
I think it's safe to say that calling it a 10-year-old BMW iDrive system is not a ton of praise. But we have more to come in the future.
Call the whole car a 10-year-old BMW.
That's true. Maybe that is good praise for the compact segment. But anyway, we'll have a lot more to come on that. Look for our full road test in a little bit. Let's move on to audience questions. What do you say?
Go for it.
So we're gonna start with some video questions. As always, we love the video questions, 30-second video clips. Send them to TalkingCars@iCloud.com. You have a better chance of getting on the show if we see your pretty face. So let's start with the first one here. Toli, let's run it for us.
I've been reading Consumer Reports since about 4th grade. Your podcast strengthens my conviction that CR is still worthy of support. Plus, your podcast is really a lot of fun. So my question concerns top-tier gasolines, which supposedly will keep my engine running cleaner. The problem is, all of the brands that I use, or none of them that I use, has any label. How do I know if the gasoline that I'm using is top tier? Thanks, and keep on talking cars.
Okay, so I really like the keep on talking cars. That's pretty cool. We'll have to use that. So Jake, this is kind of... What's that?
It's his trademark.
Yes, it is. So this is kind of like a two-part question, because first, Jake, can you explain to the good people out there what exactly is top-tier gasoline?
Sure. Well, essentially, top-tier gasoline is, there's certain minimum requirements for gasoline to sell gasoline. Top tier is going a higher requirement, which often means certain cleaners in it, and it's not to be confused from like high test, what people call, or higher octane or premium. It has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
It just has to do with, is the detergents in there? And the truth is that if you do have top tier gasoline, it does make a difference. It can help the longevity of your engine. So
right, there was a AAA study that did this, and they found that the study showed, and we did a story on this. It's on consumerreports.org. It's called "Study Shows Top Tier Gasoline Worth the Extra Price." And they found that on average, top-tier gasoline had 19 times fewer carbon deposits on injectors, intake valves, and in combustion chambers compared with non-top-tier gasoline. And that, this top-tier fuel has, a bit of a cleansing effect. So, like you said, longevity on the engine could be there.
But his question was a great question.
Right.
Well, how do I know
I'm
getting that?
Right.
And because it's not marked on the pump.
No.
So the way you know is... And in the article that we could link in the show notes, if you're looking at it basically comes down to this. Most big name brands that you're looking at the gas stations, they're going to be top tier.
Right.
We actually list
76,
out
Chevron, Citgo, Exxon Mobil, Shell, Sunoco, Texaco, all the big ones that you're familiar with. But there's a whole bunch of other ones
There's
that
a whole
you may
bunch of
not
other
be familiar
ones,
with.
and what that means, if it's a top tier retailer, it means any gasoline that you get at that retailer is going to be top tier. If you go to another retailer, you might not. There's really nothing to say that you're going to necessarily get that. And what's interesting is, even when you look at kind of the secondary, like we were just looking at. Locally, we could get gas at Costco. You could get it at Stop and Shop. You could get it at Sam's Club.
Right.
Costco is a top tier retailer.
Right.
So if you go to Costco, it's going to be top tier. You go to Sam's Club or Stop and Shop, maybe not.
Right.
So take a look at the list.
Right.
Look where you go, and we recommend getting the top tier gasoline.
Right. And like just locally here in Colchester, where we are, there's a Mobil station, but there's also a Valero. And Valero is a top tier fuel. So it's just kind of interesting. So check out the show notes, click on this story, check it out, and then you'll know which ones are top tier. And we really suggest that you do that.
There are some regional ones too, like Marathon, Irving, that are top tier.
Yeah. So definitely check that out. So let's move on to the next video question. This is Jackson looking to get some new tires for a Subaru. Let's take a look.
Hey, Consumer Reports, Jackson here. I absolutely love the show. And my question is regarding my 2009 Subaru Legacy. It currently rides on 205 45 R17 with tires. Should I upgrade the size to a 215 55 R17 to get the Michelin Cross Climate Plus? Or should I go with the same size with the Michelin Pilot Sport All Season Plus? Also, if I do go with the Michelin Pilot Sport, should I upgrade the size to a 215 or 225 width tire to potentially get better handling? Second question, we currently have the Pilot Sport All Season Plus on my dad's WRX. They recommend that you fill them with nitrogen as well as air. Could we just fill them with standard air all the way through, or should we do nitrogen as well?
Okay, well, first, Jackson, thanks for watching the podcast and thanks for the kind words. And they've got some nice cars there. Obviously, these are Subaru folks. So this is actually, last one was a two-parter. This one's a three-parter because there's a lot going on here. And so we're going to deal with, should he upgrade his tires? What size should he get? What kind of tires? And also nitrogen versus air in the tires. Jake, I'm going to start with you because there's may even be a bit of a problem with the tires that are currently on his Subaru, correct?
Okay, so if he's looking for the best tires, you could go to consumerreports.org and you could see there's a tire selector. So you put in your car and you could find out the best tires for your car. And I actually did this on his car, which was interesting to find out that he's got the wrong size tire on the car. So, a lot of people do this, right? You look at your car and you see what tire size is on it, then you go pick the same one. But the problem is if you buy a used car, even if you get it from a dealer, you're not, what's on your car is not necessarily right. So It turns out he doesn't have the right size tire on this car. I actually verified this because we tested that car, and that size tire does not come on that car. So that's the first thing. The selector will definitely choose what's going to be best for you.
Right.
Also, in your door jamb, you open up the door, it'll say actually what the factory tire size is that. Right. You should stick with that tire size, especially in this vehicle. Look, there's a whole bunch of numbers there, right? There's 215, 55, 45. Yeah, right. In order to get that other tire, you go from a 45 aspect ratio to a 55 aspect ratio. Right. What that means is there's a whole bunch more sidewall on that, which means the car's going to be off. The speedometer is going to be off. Your fuel miles are going to change. Your acceleration is going to be slower. It's not going to handle as well. You want to go to the factory size.
Right. Okay, Gabe, what about the nitrogen versus air in your tires? What's CR's policy on that?
We actually ran an experiment a few years ago. We left two sets of tires, one filled with nitrogen, one with regular air, and then checked after a while of being out in the element how much air they lost. So the nitrogen indeed lost less. And the advantage of nitrogen is that it keeps the air pressure longer. So there is some advantage there, but you always have to check at least once a month. You have to check your pressure, and once you start mixing nitrogen with regular air, that eliminates the advantage of nitrogen. So if you're offered nitrogen, basically take it. But I wouldn't pay a dime for it.
Okay. All right. Well, we've got one more video question, so let's check this one out.
Hey, Talking Cars. My name is Chris Nelson. I've heard some things online and from other people that putting higher octane fuel in my truck will improve the fuel economy. I usually put regular in, but if there's any way I can improve the fuel economy, and if the math works out, maybe I should be putting in the higher octane. So anyways, love to hear your opinion. I love the podcast, and I can't wait to hear from y'all.
Okay, so sticking with our fuel theme today, Chris from California is wondering whether he should be using premium fuel in his Ford F-150. Gabe, I'm going to throw this to you because we actually did a test comparing cars on with regular fuel versus premium fuel. So can you tell us a little bit about the results?
A couple of years ago, we took two cars, an Acura TLX and a Nissan Maxima, that the manufacturer recommends premium fuel.
Not
doesn't
require,
but recommends for better performance. And we ran them with both regular and premium, and we ran acceleration tests, fuel economy tests, and we found no difference whatsoever. So if you have recommended premium fuel, then there's no need to go for premium fuel. You can just use regular 87, and otherwise you're wasting your money.
Yeah, well, and I'll take it one step further.
Yeah.
While there are vehicles that will actually, in some situations, may have better performance with high test, if they actually say things. I shouldn't say high test.
I like the old school high test.
I know,
That's old school
language.
language.
It's not
premium.
top tier. It's
right.
premium, which
that is a little
confusing.
It is, yeah.
So anyway, higher octane fuel.
Right.
But I actually had when we did this test, I actually talked to some manufacturers about this, and they're not even advertising, even when they recommend premium, they're not saying it's going to get you better fuel economy.
Right.
And he's asking about better fuel economy. So unfortunately, that's not going to help the truck.
Yeah.
So let me take it a step further.
Whoa.
Whoa.
2 steps further now.
I'm going to take it back.
There are some cars that advertise a certain horsepower, but then the fine print tells you that that's with premium fuel. But I'll say it's so rare that you actually rev an engine to 6,000 RPM and you feel that difference. In most cars, you feel the torque, and especially with turbo engines where the torque is, you're riding that rich wave of torque with those engines. And in that range of RPM, there is no difference.
I like that, rich wave of torque.
Rich wave, I'll write that down.
I will. So anyway, folks, don't waste your money on premium fuel if your car doesn't require it, okay? So that's the
And if you're starting a
lesson
band,
there.
rich wave of torque would be, I don't think it's taken.
Okay, I think we should do it.
Are you taking it a step further now?
I'm taking
All right,
it back.
we've gone like 4 steps further. Our producer's going to kill us at this point. Let's move on to our final question. This is Eric from North Carolina. And Eric says, I'm looking to replace an Infiniti G35S with something newer. Why does the Q50 have a lower overall reliability rating, though the individual categories look decent, especially 2017? I'm also looking at a Lexus GS350 S Sport. Any suggestions for a fun, reliable, $25,000 or less rear-wheel drive sedan with room for a couple of child seats in this category? Man, Eric wants everything.
Well,
So can you address the Q50 reliability first, Jake?
Well, first I want to address that Eric's note makes me sad because the G35S was such a great car.
Yeah.
It's almost like a high watermark for that segment.
Right.
I really enjoyed it, and unfortunately, there really aren't a lot of good choices looking at the reliability and the fun to drive and all those things that vehicle did. In terms of the Q50, when you look at 2017, you look at the reliability history, you look at our site, it's got issues. When you look at reliability, there's 17 trouble spots that we list out on our site, and then we get into some trouble spots if you dig even deeper. So there's some vehicles that might have one problem, and you might see one red mark and one problem. In a vehicle like this, there's a kind of a fair amount of issues in many different areas. And when you add all that up you wind up with an unreliable vehicle.
Right.
So it's actually a bunch of different issues that all add up.
Right.
So unfortunately, no, it doesn't have the reliability that G37 had, or the
Right.
G37 had.
Right. So Gabe, what would you suggest to Eric as far as, Q50, Lexus GS350, or something else entirely?
With all due respect to the Lexus GS, after all, it has my initials on that. But I think that car is going to is going to bore him after a while. So I did some homework for him here.
Here we go. Gabe has notes.
You found
So
the car?
I found Eric's car. It's a BMW 535i, rear-wheel drive. It's 2015. 2015 is a good vintage for that car. It's reliable according to our data. And it's got this particular example is $22,000, 42,000 miles. It's in New Jersey. It's a little far away from North Carolina, but we can do something about that.
It'll be a fun drive on the way back.
Yeah. Now, as another alternative, if you don't care that it's not like a luxury brand,
Oh my God.
Chevy SS. It was available, for only a few years, 2014, 2017, I think. But that car is so much fun. We tested one of those. Unfortunately, we don't have reliability data on the car, and there aren't too many of them. But and if you can stand 17 miles per gallon, then that would be a great car.
Hopefully there's some good choices there for you, Eric. That's going to do it for this episode. If you want to learn more about the cars and topics we talked about, you can click on the links in the show notes. As always, don't forget to send your questions, comments, 30-second video clips at TalkingCars@iCloud.com. And if you're going to be in the Brooklyn, New York area on Friday, April 19th, and you want to join us for our live taping of episode 200 of Talking Cars, send us a note to TalkingCars@consumer.org. We'd love to have you join us for that special event. For these two awesome guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next week.